Grief. Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Dancing with Change and Facility Management. I'm really pleased to have joining me today uh, Julie Lavergne. She is uh, an expert in so many things, and so I just want to introduce you to her background here. So, Julie actually lives for the aha moment. She helps organizations, she helps teams and leaders think more critically and consistently to just make better strategic decisions. So she's a founder and CEO of 8 Ball Clarity, her company, and she loves needling brains to co-create sustainable, innovative solutions tailored to meet the needs of today's dynamic landscape. So she is a former executive with nearly 2 decades in a global tech company. Her experience spans enterprise risk, global quality, supply chain, digital transformations, rapid manufacturing scaling, new product launches, business strategy, organizational development, and talent management. So she is the quintessential generalist, and her education and training includes Berkeley's AI Business Strategies and Application Certificate, Certified Critical Thinking Facilitator and Coach from Kepner Trigo, ProSci Change Management Certification, IRCC Organization Development Certification, and a Master's in Systems Engineering and Business Administration with a thesis in lean methodologies. So, welcome, Julie. I see we hold a couple of things in common. Certainly, the fact that we identify as generalists, certainly, and I think that mostly this industry facility management is comprised of generalists, and we also share an interest in lean. So that is super. But I want that we sort of talk about your support of and leadership in, um, the human component. You've got so much background engineering, it's technical, technology, it's technical, running businesses, technical, well, for the most part. But so I want that you can share with us advice and your journey for actually focusing on people interaction and why you feel that that's important uh, to any industry.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Kathleen, for having me. And yes, we do have many things in common, hence the years of us interacting and always finding new areas that we love to explore together. Um, Thank you for reading my bio. It's always hard when somebody else reads it to you. And I should add for your audience, I also was a facility manager for a short period of time. As part of my generalist hat, there was a time where my boss didn't have somebody to look after all the buildings. The person had exited the organization, and so she needed somebody to make sure that all the facility things kept going. And so she says, "Can you do that?" And I was like, "Can I?" So interestingly, I did learn a lot about noise reduction and building structures, and yeah, as you said, the generalist hat, but that was definitely not my core skill. So to come back to your question about human interaction, I guess I look a little bit at my journey. I said I was you read like I was an engineer, like technical training, and was working in that field from an operation technical perspective for 10 years. And then I made the transition to, I'll say, the people side of things through learning and development and talent and organizational development. And there's two things that helped me with that transition. One, I was the quintessential engineer. 1 + 1 = 2. Like, don't you all see that that's the answer? Right. And with mixed success, in some ways, there is a success in that. But then sometimes it was just a harder lift, right? Trying to move through a project saying, well, this is clearly what we need to do. And so that was a little bit of, I was maybe considered a little bit more bulldogish, trying to kind of get the projects through. Then I was introduced to critical thinking, right? So I did the course, and then I became the facilitator, and then became the teacher. And in critical thinking, a big part of a good complex decision is considering multiple factors, right? So if you think about any capex or any big piece of equipment, you have the cost, right? You have the health and safety, the environment. So you have all of these different factors that need to be considered with different weightings to it. And that's a discussion. And so as I started thinking more with multiple lenses, it also started having me appreciate the different experience and thoughts and perspectives of the people at the table. And then hearing from them and incorporating them into the solution for what would be a much stronger solution. So I moved from Myers-Briggs, I think would say data to sensing. I forget exactly. I would move from a 1 + 1 = 2. This is very obvious, everybody in the room. This is the data, not really understanding where everybody else was at, to sensing, I think 1 + 1 = 2. What do you think? What do you think? What's going on here? And hearing a little bit of the nuances. And that's where the people interaction came that really made a much bigger difference. And I think that's where I would say my projects was more successful, would be greased a little bit more, things would run a little bit because there was that perspective that went into them.
That's brilliant. That's, quite frankly, your reference to both critical thinking and systems thinking is such an important aspect of the whole facility management game. There's too much going on. Well, not too much. There's tons going on, and there's so many different perspectives to actually understand how it interconnects and how it's going to have effect. So, how did you actually um, reach the point where you started to see these conversations being so important that became a challenge in actually structuring these conversations?
Yeah, a little bit when you were talking about different aspects, I assume in facilities management is balancing the long term and short term, right? You have so many short term requirements to be met, but then at the end, I've heard this from you, facilities management is a long term game, right? You have to think about it very much in the long term. So trying to balance that with people, I have to say, is challenging because people sometimes we talk about specialist generalists. Sometimes they're specialists, right? Sometimes their forte might be thinking long term, or their forte might be thinking short term, or it might be the health and safety aspect, and they really are the specialists that their whole reason for being is to succeed in that domain. And you need those people, but now how do you incorporate all those voices, because they're all right, but all of those voices need to go into the solution. And I think that's where the facilitation skill comes in, and kind of bringing a group together to a common solution. And the biggest part is finding that common goal that the entire team is working towards and articulating that. So it's a little bit that strategic end result outcome. And so while everybody has their perspective and their need for having their voice being amplified, that's where you start understanding the overarching layers and voices, and how do you, in some ways, compromise. Sometimes there are some decisions that will weigh in a certain way versus another, and that's part of the discussion.
Yeah, and sometimes I think maybe, as I'm listening to you describe that, sometimes timing itself is a factor. So,
Yeah,
well, everyone might agree on the direction. Different decisions may, in fact, need to take place in a certain sequence for succeeding. So it's
100%.
not that everyone isn't correct. They're just correct at a different time, maybe.
Very good point. Very good point. And I think we have to call it out this day and age is being agile and adaptable.
Mm.
I'm doing a lot of strategic plans with organizations now, and the plans we set even just a few months ago, where a strategic plan, you kind of set it, you work for a little bit, you come back to it and say, okay, are we still working on this? And they say, well, Julie, so much has changed now with our current kind of world landscape. What do we do? I said, well, that's part of being strategic, right? Is realizing when you need to, as you saying, hear different voices at that different time and maybe lean a certain way just because of the timing of things.
You know what? That's so true. I mean, we started this whole exploration of change uh, a couple of years ago we started talking about that, and you know, some of us, most of us actually have been around for a bit, so we've got a broader view of what takes place. But change has really, really been accelerating. And I keep thinking about, throwing a baseball in the air and watching it go up until it reaches its cresting point and it literally stops for whatever nanosecond and then starts descending and starts accelerating in that descent. And I kind of think that we might be in one of those places right now where change has just started to accelerate and it's impacting so many different things. We're having conversations with facility managers about the price of things. It's totally in flux. You can't rely on any kind of pricing, so planning projects to get things done is a huge, huge challenge. But given that that's the case, I really think that having skill sets with people interaction becomes even more critical because not only are you dealing with your colleagues, but you're having to put forth an argument, convince people, take this path, consider that, come and join us for a conversation. So, how would you advise that people go about collaborating a lot better together?
Hmm. When you were talking, the first thing I'd say is appreciate that you can't do it alone.
Mm,
I think appreciate that there's a time I was reading that like the world is so complex now. It's the number one kind of worry of many CEOs and business leaders, et cetera, the complexity and appreciate that we're mere human. We are not AI or computer, and a mere human can only deal with so much complexity. Yeah, as much as we work out our brain still has some limits. And so if you think about your ability to handle all the complexity, just appreciate you most likely can't do it on your own. So I think the first time, once you appreciate that, then you purposely seek out others that might deal with a different perspective or complexity or hold a different weight of the problem in order for you to come together. So I think that's one is the appreciation. And the second is that curiosity. So the other part of your inability to deal with so much complex is also the ability to know that you don't know everything, right? There's so much, there's you know a lot and you're an expert in many things, but it's infinite, right? So if you're curious on how a better solution could come together, leads you to talk with all your colleagues and suppliers, customers, whoever stakeholders may be, to really understand their perspective a bit more and help you. I call it a ping pong, and you and I have done it many times, Kathleen. Like you have your perspective, I have my perspective, and then you start asking questions, and you start kind of it's like your brain's a little bit Play-Doh, and you start formulating a little bit, or maybe kind of finding these bridge together based on the questions and information that comes out. And the other part, like that leads me to curiosity, is creativity, right? So then we need more creative solutions. And it's appreciating that most likely all the problems and big and gnarly as you may have solved in the past, it's not what you're going to face in the future. They're bigger and gnarlier. And so that's why you need that creativity of finding a solution together with somebody else. So I think once you start appreciating those things, you naturally want that human interaction with somebody to have that bigger impact.
that's such good advice. I'm just thinking through this, firstly, just being curious
Mhm.
about, okay, what's going on? Understanding timelines, certainly in the facility management business, it's long timelines, and yet it's also short timelines, and it's everything in between. And then understanding, okay, like what might happen if, right? So then inviting people to weigh in on that, not necessarily the usual suspects. You might want to actually invite folks that wouldn't normally necessarily weigh in on something like that because perhaps you just need to make sure you don't have any blind spots, that you've actually got these things considered and that you can put a path forward. Facility management, it's physical environment, and we've been spending a fair bit of time talking about risk, for sure, talking about preparedness, talking about resilience, connecting that to, various climate things going on or anticipated to go on and various other things as well. And so, just understanding well, and speculating what, the future might hold because of looking at these different things becomes really important. So how do you tie it all together? Like, how do you actually create an either a playbook or sheet music or whatever so that you've actually covered this and it you can use it as sort of a guide and outline to, pass this on to folks and get them engaged.
When you're talking about risk, have me think of my certification with Kepner Trago and something I've learned about critical thinking. It's being clear, what are you doing? So when you gather and you're trying to attempt a piece of work with other people, typically it will fall into 4 or 5 buckets. One is, this is a complex situation. We're really not sure what to do. Like, it's kind of overwhelming. There's so many things to consider. So you go into a situation appraisal of like, okay, let's start brainstorming and dissecting this thing of kind of putting an action plan together. Or it's a decision you need to make, right? You need to pick a lane, you need to pick a direction of some sort. You have a few different options and you need to make a choice. So that is a group of people. And they're all systematic process on how to go about that, and understanding those processes really helps the group come together because they're not, you have a trusted process that helps guide and has everybody's voices to have that end result of situation appraisal, a decision, or risk. The other part is understanding, okay, we've picked this lane, we've made these choices, what's the risk? Where can, you put your black hat on, where are the things that could go wrong? Or the other one is we have a problem, like we literally have a problem and then we need to find a solution. So typically people's concerns fall under these types of buckets. The other one is just do it. Sometimes you're just concerned because you have a long to-do list, but it's just a matter of getting to it. So understanding why the group has come together, what they're looking to achieve, will help them inform a collaborative process in order to get that hard thinking done together with a whole bunch of humans. I'm big on making it visible. Like, making your thinking visible is it's really powerful. It helps, again, good questions, helps people stay on like, be aligned on where the points have been made, where the process is going. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that, and I've seen the power of it. And every time I talk with groups, as they're talking and swirling on, we've all had swirls in meetings, and everybody's swirling and swirling and swirling and swirling and swirling and repeating. I sit there and go, well, we're trying to achieve this. This is the process that we could use in order to end the swirl.
That's so true. I'm personally a fan of whiteboards and post-it notes. And I am because I'm very visual. I mean, it's my background in architecture for sure, but this business is visual. And quite frankly, no matter your background, if you can see something rather than just hear it, that is so much easier to align folks and to catch any missing spots or crossovers or conflicts or whatever. So yeah, I'm totally behind that for sure. The
And
old
even if you are very like mental, like you could hold lots of information, making it visual is not important. I think is it even appreciating that alleviates your brain of holding that information in order to allow your brain power to go on to other things. So unload some of the decisions, facts, data, things from your brain that allows you then to have more capacity for what's next.
there's one thing that I think that I really want to ask you about, particularly from the people perspective, is that while things change, people aren't necessarily excited about change. In fact, frequently there's a lot of resistance to change. So, do you have any insights on how to kind of cross that chasm to make it less, I mean, people are driven by anticipation, by fear, by, you know, looking for whatever. But how do you guide groups over that, ooh, change fear?
Mhm. Yeah, that one's a really complex one. I can't say I have the magic wand because I think there's a lot of people trying to figure out that magic wand. I think you've identified that people will have various things that are motivating them, right? What's holding them back, and some of it may be personal, like sometimes understanding their workload, understanding their fears. Like I think the hard part is there's probably a lot of individual answers as to why they're resisting change, which makes it a lot harder on you as a change practitioner to dive in and understand. One of the things I like to do, and that's a little bit my style, is what's the alternative,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like right now, the world is changing. So if you, let's say, as an example, refuse to adopt digital technology, what's the alternative? Like, what's the alternative you don't, right? So picture that line of risk. And so I think there's that of really kind of picturing what the alternative is. The other one, going back to risk, I've seen this be very powerful when people are really worried about things. And I remember, speaking of digital transformation, I remember doing this. They were really worried about the cloud and everybody's going to steal our information. There's like a lot of anxiety and worry and change, and we can't do that. Then go through the risk assessment. So I say, face the monster, right? So you kind of say, okay, so you're really worried about it, this monster that you're describing, let's dissect it, right? And so you kind of really are, how is this monster going to show up? What's the probability of this monster? What will be the impact if the monster shows up? And the minute they have to articulate all these things, then they're able so often to calm down from it because they realize it's probably not as big or not as probable. Or even if it is, I said, what would you do? Okay, big monster's going to come and you're worried about it and it's going to be most probable and it's going to be hugely impact. What would you do? And they go, well, I would just do this. And it's so funny how so often they also have the answer what they would do. And so then it just realizes it removes all these barriers of moving forward with whatever change they're looking for.
That's brilliant. Actually, that's so brilliant because I think it really allows people to sort of get it off their chest, right? In a safe place, in a safe discussion. And you're right, it stimulates, you know, ideas about because you know it, how you can solve it, because this fear is internalized, right? How you can not just kind of exorcise it. So, oh, that's great. That's brilliant. So,
Almost like relying on how, I mean, we're for the most part, we are expert problem solvers. And I think it's a very Canadian thing as well, is that when faced with something, we rise to the challenge. We don't always want to anticipate the challenge and we're worried about it, but when it's there, we face it. And I think it's kind of sometimes reminding people of that.
yeah, actually, that's such a good point. I think we've got tons of experience and history in that. And I think we also have a lot of experience, and it's the nature, certainly, of work that facility managers do. It's the nature of work that you do. It's team play. It's always team play to begin with. So it just really invites that we get a lot more accustomed to and expert in this interaction, this people interaction. Yeah, we can fix that air conditioner. Yeah, we can fix that electrical problem. Cool. But let's get really good at team play and fixing much bigger environments that all of this exists in.
Well, now we're getting back to my earlier thing, is 1 + 1 = 3 or 4 or
Yeah,
5, right? That's the mentality of getting good teamwork, is that you get so much more done.
I love it. That's great. Hey, you know what? This is an amazingly interesting conversation. Of course, I always enjoy talking with you, and I'm really pleased that we can share this with our entire facility management crowd, which is large, it's global, and I think it's just really good advice for, just getting better at the work that we do and interact with all the time. So I really want to thank you. This has been very enlightening, very interesting.
Oh, thank you, Kathleen. I love talking about this. I know we only scratched the surface, but I'm always open to virtual coffee chats and really deep diving into this. And so anybody could reach out to me anytime, Julie Laverne. So thank you so much, Kathleen, for having me.
Well, perfect. We're going to post this and with your contact information, and we'll certainly, as we do, we invite folks to connect. We're in the process right now as an organization in setting up mentorships, which I've talked to you about already, and that's really it's popular. It's taking shape, and why not? There's so much we can offer to, the next and continuing generation of folks. So, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
And sometimes it's reversed too. Sometimes I've had I call it an under 30 mentor because again, different generations have different perspectives. So we could get invited or informed from all different people.
We can, and that's probably one of the reasons that we connect. So,
That's right.
well, that's
Thank you.
great. Thank you.